Hello and welcome to Fintech Insider Insights. I'm David Brear, CEO here at 11FS. Since its launch back in 2011, GoCardless has been taking the pain out of getting paid for businesses, from solopreneurs to household names. For over 13 years, with nearly 100,000 businesses on its books, partnerships with over 350 financial services providers, and over 500 million in funding and multiple acquisitions. I'm going to be talking here with Hiroki Takeuchi, who is the founder and CEO over at GoCardless. And really, really good to be here. I mean, fantastic offices. I've been super impressed. Like it just opens up. And I hear, was it about 2 years ago you redid everything? Is that right?
Maybe a bit less than 2 years ago, but it was kind of sort of after COVID had settled and, we'd figured out that there was different ways we wanted to use the office. We did a bit of a refurb. So yeah, it's looking shiny and new.
Yeah, very impressed, I have to say. And lots of people in it as well. There's not many businesses that are super busy on a Thursday afternoon in London at the moment, is there? With all the changes?
Well, I mean, it's still very variable. Some days I come in and it's a bit too quiet for my liking. Yeah. But no, it's great when you have that buzz in the office.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to talk a little bit about all of the stuff that I've mentioned in terms of the changes. You were obviously on the podcast a couple of years ago. Lots has changed since then in terms of you guys and you, like I say, going from strength to strength in that space. But maybe if we touch on that a little bit in terms of what's been going on over the last few months. Obviously, you announced an acquisition of NuaPay back in March, as well as the recent partnership with FSB. Talk to us a little bit more about those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said, there's been a lot that's been going on. NuaPay we're super excited about. It's the second acquisition that we've made. So the first was Nordigan that we acquired about 2 and a bit years ago now. And, we're still building that muscle of, bringing new companies into the business. But it's a great way of accelerating against our vision and our strategy. And so, we're super excited to be joining forces with NuaPay. It helps us to get involved with working through other payment providers. Is something that we've already been working towards organically, but the acquisition of NuaPay really helps to accelerate that significantly. We're also super excited about some of the other capabilities that they've built as well. We've always been very focused on helping businesses to collect money, but one of the things that I've just been asked time and time again from many different customers is, it'd be great if you could help me send the money as well, right? We've never really done that before, but that's something that we want to get involved in, and NuaPay will help us to accelerate there as well. So, super excited about doing that acquisition. You also kind of mentioned the FSB partnership. Partnerships has always been something that has been core to the GoCardless journey. Our very first customers we got through partnerships. So it was there from day one. And FSB is a great partnership, really focused on what has always been at the heart of the company, which is helping small businesses to get paid on time. And we now work with, as you mentioned, a real variety of different businesses, all the way from small ones all the way through to much larger ones. But it's always great to be supporting and driving that kind of growth amongst the small businesses that we work with.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of different challenge. You talk about that vision. Vision's about being the world's bank payment network. You started the business from the get-go. You went from 0 to 1 to 10 to building things from scratch. At what point in your strategy then did you sort of go, do you know what, we can accelerate by acquisitions or because it's a different type of task, isn't it? I guess as a CEO of a business, it flexes slightly different muscles as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to build new muscles, I think is the best way to put it. I think for us, it happened quite naturally. With Nordigan as our first acquisition, we were trying to invest into the open banking space, and that was a different set of rails, different set of challenges, and we knew that we were going to need to be able to bring a lot of that capability in house. And so the question was, do we build it ourselves, or can we acquire someone that could speed that up? In Nordigan, we found a company that was a fantastic fit. They built an awesome product. They had a really great team, one that felt culturally, very closely aligned. Not exactly the same, obviously, but closely aligned to the culture that we built at GoCardless. And so that happened actually a bit more organically. It wasn't like we set out to say, right, let's go and start doing M&A. But I think what we've seen is that, over the last year or two, there's been more and more opportunities to look at M&A, right? And there's a lot more activity in the market. Even if deals aren't getting done, there's a lot of like discussions and exploration. And I think a lot of businesses are thinking about like, how can we combine to accelerate towards our visions and our goals. And that means that we've looked at a lot of things. And one of the things that I've been very sort of focused on is how do we stay very disciplined? Like how do we make sure that what we're doing is really aligned to what we say we want to do, not just like opportunistically doing things that maybe take you in a different direction. And so we're trying to be very disciplined about it, but it's really exciting to be, learning about, how to acquire companies, how to integrate them, how to make them successful. And it is a great way of, accelerating against our strategy. So, we're very excited about it.
It's an interesting challenge, and that focus, as you say, when you back in 2011 when you just started the business, you're everybody's in the same room, you're doing one thing, everybody's sort of focused around it.
Yeah.
How do you sort of manage that over time? Because has the sort of the vision of the business changed dramatically from? I mean, 2011 feels like
a long time ago.
Long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, the vision has stayed pretty much the same. In terms of direction, but I think that the scope of it is what's really changed over time. I think one of the things that keeps me really energized, and there's always excited me, and a big part of the reason why I continue to build the business is because I always feel like we're able to tackle bigger and bigger opportunities and challenges, and have a bigger impact in the world. And so the things that we're doing now, I wouldn't have felt would have been even on the cards when we first started the business. I remember a few years into building GoCardless, we were having these kind of soul-searching conversations between me and my co-founders about like, could we ever generate any like meaningful revenue from this business at all? We didn't really know how big the market was. And I look back on that now and just realize how silly that was. And so, it feels like we were able to tackle bigger and bigger challenges. And I think that that's kind of part of that journey is, taking on different challenges, doing things like acquiring businesses, is something that is part of what keeps everything exciting.
Yeah. And is that what sort of drives the sort of products and services roadmap as well to a certain degree in terms of, solving bigger and better problems? I personally always find it feels like a computer game, doesn't it? Every level unlocks a bigger level of bad guy that you're sort of chasing on the next one.
A little bit, yeah.
But I mean, that's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the key thing is, being very clear about what we think that vision for the product looks like, right? And then making sure that anything we do, whether it's partnerships or M&A, is really aligned to that vision.
Yeah.
And so we have a fairly clear view of what we're trying to build. And if we can do that faster by acquiring other companies, then that's fantastic. But we really want to stay disciplined about it.
I guess over that time as well, 2011 to here, the payments landscape has changed pretty dramatically, hasn't it? Different players and, the sort of proliferation of different sort of technologies that have come along. And
yeah, absolutely.
I know it feels weird to say, I mean, we started 11FS in 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've been doing this for a long time now. You were 5 years before us. Like, you've seen so much change. What are you really excited about still?
Well, I mean, I think that some of the themes that we were really excited about from the beginning, but at the time were just sort of nascent ideas, are starting to become a reality, right? And so, what got us into this vision of building the world's bank payment network was this, idea that, if you were to design a payment system for the internet, then, what would it look like? And our thesis was, it would look a lot more like a bank payment, right? Like you just move money as directly as you could from one account to another. And at the time, there was a lot of limitations in terms of the technology and the infrastructure that underpinned all of these banking systems that made that possible, but only in a very narrow set of circumstances, right? And we've had a lot of success doing that, focused specifically on like recurring payments, and that still continues to be the vast majority of what we do today. And the thing that I've learned about payments is that these markets, like even when you take like what feels like quite narrow use cases, they're massive markets, right? Especially when you look at them globally. But if you look at things like open banking, if you look at things like faster payments, those are things that back when we were starting in 2011, I think the term open banking was coined like around that time, right? But at that point, it was just an idea, right? And now it's starting to become a reality. And what I'm super excited about is how I think those technologies and how those rails and changes to the infrastructure are going to enable that vision that we had from the very beginning to become more of a reality. And that's really what we're focused on for the longer term.
Yeah, like you say, open banking, account-to-account payments, all of these things are sort of changing the infrastructure that people have got to play with.
Yeah,
I guess there's always lots of naysayers or concerns about open banking in terms of whether it's sort of hit the highs of.
Yeah.
There's always this.
Well, I don't think it has hit the highs yet, right? We're still in the early days of it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've learned about payments is that these changes, to the way in which payments work, the way in which we interact with the businesses that we buy things from, they're changes that happen over really long periods, right? But I think the impact of those changes is often underestimated. And if you even look at things like cards, like we take it for granted that like we pay for everything with credit cards, in all sorts of places. But 20, 30 years ago, like you couldn't pay for things with a card, like in most of the places that we now think of as like, obvious, and was it ever different, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, this is a trend that will play out not over months or even years. It will play out over maybe decades even. And so this is a long journey. And I think this is something that we see as like the vision that we have as something that we want to build for the long term.
Yeah. And I guess that points to a breadth of product offering, a breadth of services offering, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, as you talked about earlier on, scale, right? Scale in the payment space is critical, isn't it? But
absolutely.
Regulation is often put as a something that holds it back. It's a handbrake, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, particularly here in the UK.
Well, I mean, I think the reality is that payments is something that is a very sensitive topic, right? I mean, you're dealing with people's money, and so I think it's right that there's a level of oversight and regulation for payments companies, and I think it's important that as a company that's in this space, as a startup, as a scale up, you kind of have to embrace that, right? It's a big part of the value proposition is navigating all of those regulatory challenges and doing that in a way that doesn't make the experience really, really bad for your customers, right? And so if you can do that, then that I see as part of the secret sauce of what we do, right? And so I try and sort of embrace those things as opposed to focus on the challenges that they create.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? I find the sort of lobbying around the legislative side of things and then the execution and people there's always opportunities. It's whether people really sort of execute against them, isn't it? But open banking seems very similar, particularly here. I know there's lots of Australia and Singapore and Hong Kong are doing different things in that space, but it feels there's plenty of opportunity. If you can get the use cases right. So talk to us a little bit more about the instant bank pay product that you guys have got, because that feels to me like a place where you've actually weaved together a number of these things to really bring something about that solves a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that we've always been really excited about with open banking is that it enables you to create a really seamless way of paying directly from your bank account that's super, super fast and super secure. And that's something that we've built an offering around, alongside the direct debit products that we started with. And it's been great seeing that adopted by some of our existing customers, but also new customers. So they're working with businesses like Just Giving, right, enabling them to collect payments for all the donations that are going through their platform, and importantly, making sure more of that money goes to the funds and the campaigns that are raising that money and to those good causes. So there's lots of examples of that, and I think we're still very much in the early days of these kind of open banking payments. We're seeing it growing very fast, but it's still largely centered around quite a narrow set of use cases, right? And what excites me most is actually when I see some of our customers that are experimenting with those products that we've created and using them in ways that we didn't really anticipate. So, one of our customers is a cash and carry business, right? And so they have all of these like physical stores, and they're using it as, at their point of sale, and enabling their customers to pay directly from their bank account when they're in the store, right? That's not something we really anticipated. It wasn't the focus, but they kind of pieced it together in a way that worked for them. And so seeing that kind of experimentation and seeing it being used in these different use cases, that's something that gives me a lot of excitement, and I think shows the promise of what can be done with these new technologies.
Yeah, I mean that's a super interesting story, and I know from talking to you guys before, I mean, a big part of your product development strategy is, you bring customers into that process. Obviously, you're a good way into the journey now. You're beyond scale up in terms of that journey. Are you still sort of staying true to those principles in terms of bringing customers in, talking to customers, understanding?
I mean, that's super important. Yeah, for sure.
But it's,
I think it's a balance though, right? I think that and at various points you have to be slightly different places on that balance. Sometimes you need to be investing very heavily into maybe stuff that isn't being immediately asked for by your customers, but you think is going to be really important strategically. So, for example, when we first built out the global network, right, that connects all of these bank payment systems around the world together, that was a bit of a speculative bet, right? We had to go and do that. Whereas other times, you need to be really responding to what your customers are asking for, and in particular, as we've entered these new markets, you start hearing about, okay, well, the payment processing isn't vast enough, or this bit of the sign-up journey really sucks, or and you have to really listen. And so it's a balancing act. Some of it needs to be driven by the vision, some of it needs to be driven by what your customers are asking for, and it's always a tricky art to finding the right balance to that.
Definitely, but I guess as a regulated entity, usually the bigger people get, the more regulated they get, the harder it is to talk to customers, the harder it is to continue that sort of velocity of product. But you guys seem to be, if anything, getting quicker.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree that like the fact that we're regulated changes the way in which we can engage with our customers. It obviously creates a lot of requirements, and there's a regulatory burden to running a business like ours, and that's not insignificant. But you have to kind of carve that out separately, right? Like if you let yourself just get sucked entirely into just that, then you'll never push your product forwards. But it requires meaningful investment, and so I think that's one of the key reasons why scale is so important in these kind of industries, right? Like, because you need to be able to do both, right? And doing both, if you're not big enough, gets very expensive very quickly.
100%. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, I want to continue the conversation with Hiroki about where GoCardless's future lies, profitability, and international expansion as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with you very shortly.
Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for ISO 27001, SOC 2, GDPR, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our audience gets a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.
Welcome back to Fintech Insider Insights, where I'm in conversation with GoCardless's CEO Hiroki. Let's maybe look a little bit into the future then. And obviously, we've talked a little bit in the first half about where you guys have kind of come from and the velocity of change that is. But what does the next sort of 12 to 18 months look like? What's the impact that you guys are looking to drive?
Well, I mean, it's always about growth, really, isn't it? When you're in our kind of phase. So, that's first and foremost on my mind. How do we make sure that we continue growing the business? How do we make sure that we're working and helping as many businesses as possible? A big part of the focus over the next 12 to 18 months is also around the recent acquisition that we've made with Nuapay and integrating that into our business. bringing some of the great products and technology that they've built to the surface of our product, and enabling our customers to benefit from those. So I'm really excited about things like the ability to send money as well as collect. I think that's going to help a lot of our customers. I hear a lot of demand for that. So really, really excited about this. I think one of the big themes for us more generally, not just over the next 12 to 18 months, but over the longer term as well, is we really believe in the global opportunity for our business. And we obviously started in the UK. It's still our biggest market, our home market. But I really want to see some of these other international markets to take over the UK. Right? We have to recognize that the UK is relatively a small market compared to some of those other countries out there. And so there's bigger opportunities elsewhere. And I think that's something that I'd love to see us do, is create that healthy competition internally to see who can be the biggest market. So international expansion is really, really key for us. And otherwise, there's just obviously the big topic of profitability, right? That's something that all companies in our space, I think, have had to adapt to over the last couple of years. It's obviously a very different funding environment. I think it's been a return to first principles in some ways, and we've made really good progress on that, right? And I think that being able to do everything that we want to do, but also do that in a way where we're not just profitable but driving profitability is the real kind of key to it all.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? You don't focus on. I don't think any business should just focus on profitability. Profitability is the outcome of the process that you go through, isn't it? But ultimately, every business is a business, isn't it? So
no, I think it's really more about constraints, right? And operating with more constraints. And in a way, I think what you learn a lot about yourself as well, right? Sometimes the greatest level of creativity comes when you have the greatest constraints, right?
Sure.
And I think that's the thing that's really changed significantly is there's clearly a much bigger constraint on not just us, but all technology businesses to operate in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And that's something that we all need to adapt to.
You touched a little bit on the international expansion. Obviously, like you say, the UK's a funny little sandbox, really, in terms of the size of it, but obviously all of the opportunities that sit here. But, you guys are active across Europe, Australia, America. I mean, it feels like there's so much opportunity out there. Like you say, payments at scale obviously works best.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Where's the limit there? Is there any markets that look difficult or more difficult, or is there any obvious spaces? Obviously, there's some geographies that have got real huge scale potential in there as well. What geographies excite you?
Well, look, we wouldn't be in any of the geographies that we're in if we weren't excited about them,
Sure.
right? So we're super excited about all of them. I think the reality is that all of these markets are huge, right? Even in the UK, we're still scratching the surface of the potential of our home market.
Sure.
So it's really more about driving the execution within those and growing as quickly as possible. So I think a lot less about the market size of these things, because the reality is that even the smallest markets are still much bigger than where we are today, right? So we have a lot of scope, and I think it's more about where can we find the strongest product market fit, where can we make customers the happiest, and that's always going to drive the fastest growth, right? The happier you can make your customers, the faster you're going to grow. And so I think that's really how we focus on it, is how do we find those places where we're having the biggest impact.
Yeah, as you say there's a product market fit, different competitors, different customer requirements.
And also a lot of differences in payment culture as well. I think that's the other important part, right? Payments is something that is actually quite a locally driven market.
Yeah, it's a funny niche, that, isn't it? Because it's like an evolutionary thing, isn't it? It's happened differently everywhere, albeit there's sort of some commonality, isn't there?
Absolutely.
But why do you think that change is then? Or is there must be geographies where the UK product market fit better maps than others? Obviously, India is a completely different payments market than the US, for example.
Yeah. Well, so as in, why do I think that the payment cultures vary so much from market to market? Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes through from the evolution of payments, right? And if you look at like the US as an example, obviously that's where credit and debit cards started. That's where the card networks originated. That's where they have the strongest product, and that's dictated a lot of the payment culture there. Whereas if you look at markets like Europe, bank payments has always been much more prevalent. Especially in some countries like Germany or the Netherlands. Bank payments is actually the most common method of payment, right? And so I think that you see all these kind of individual kind of paths that these markets are on, and as you said, there's a lot of commonality between them, but that does dictate the culture quite a bit, and I think that's something that we have to adapt to, right? I think what we find is that bank payments is that there's significant volume in all of these markets. It's where the volume is being processed and what it's being processed for. That's where maybe some of the nuances are, and I think what we find is that there's specific kind of use cases where we see real strong traction in these different markets, and that's where we need to make sure that we're focusing the proposition and the go-to-market.
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit earlier on, and I don't want to keep coming back to this because it feels like I'm telling you you're old when you're clearly not.
I feel quite old,
but 13 years into building it, I mean, you still sound as excited about solving these problems as you did, early on when we spoke to you, and every time that we've had you on the podcast as well. What are you drinking? What are you doing every morning to make you feel like amped about coming into the office? But what sort of
coffee.
Is that what it is? Like highly caffeinated CEOs. That's a good idea. But 13 years into leading the business, like it still feels like you've got such a big passion for solving these problems, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to have that passion, right? It's building a business takes a long time. I think anything that's worthwhile takes a long time to do, I feel very, very lucky because we're able to operate at a level of scale that if I look back to the beginning of the journey, and some of the early conversations we had, like I wouldn't have dreamt that we could kind of get to this sort of scale. But at the same time, I think I look at it and I just feel like I don't feel like we're successful yet.
Sure.
Right? I don't feel like we've maximized the opportunity. I don't feel like we're even close to really grasping the overall kind of scale of things. And so I just think that there's so much more ahead of us, right? And that's really what keeps me kind of motivated is that feeling of like, well, look, there's just so much more we could do. And that for me is a big part of the enjoyment as well, is that at every stage you're having to adapt, right? And the way that we run the company now versus the way we ran it even 5 years ago or even 2-3 years ago is so different. And taking on challenges like how do we acquire new companies and like integrate them so that it's really like successful. These are all things that I'm learning for the first time. I'm a first-time founder, so everything I'm doing I'm learning on the job, and that keeps me on my toes.
I mean, it's going pretty well so far, I have to say. 13 years into this journey, like as a first-time founder, it's going all right. So
we're not dead yet. So
but it's an interesting challenge that I guess, as you say, different scales of the organization as you've gone through. Though the challenges when you're 10 people, 15 people to how many people work at GoCardless now?
About 750 people now.
Yeah, and I mean this is again, big office, lovely office, different type of challenge when you're managing that many people. Obviously, they're not all direct reports, thank goodness. But how have you found that?
Well, I think it's you have to adapt, right? And one of the things that I think was a big learning for me was probably that transition from being sort of a founder where you can lead the business almost like directly, right? You're all in the same room together. You can kind of know every single person that you're working with. Direct people very closely. Through to more of a kind of a leadership role where we're now at a scale where I can't know everyone in the business, and you're having to like lead through others more. And so there's a lot of learning, right? And I think that is a big part of what keeps me excited and engaged is I feel like I'm always having to learn and push myself to be able to kind of do my job, right? I always feel like I could be doing it better, and that sort of there's a big satisfaction you get from that.
Yeah, I always say the high school career guidance counselor would have been surprised I'd turned out doing what I'm actually doing? Like, would little you have gone, 13
I don't know.
years as a CEO, I could see this? Like,
yeah, I don't think I'd ever thought about it really. It's all just all kind of happens one bit at a time, really, doesn't it?
That's true, very true. You guys have got a partnership in place with the Trussell Trusts and Swim England. Tell us a little bit more about that. Obviously, you touched a little bit on the Just Giving side of things and helping those guys out, but this is part of their awards. Talk to us a little bit more about it. What does it mean?
The Just Giving Awards, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, like I think it's a really fantastic initiative and event, right? It's an opportunity for celebration of some amazing, feats and amazing campaigns and people raising money for incredible causes, right? And that's something that I think is just a great thing for anybody to be involved in. And so we feel really honoured to be able to be part of that. We've had a really strong partnership with Just Giving for a while now, and that just feels like another way in which we can support that partnership, and also at the same time support and celebrate some fantastic people in our country. So I think it's a really great thing to be part of.
Fantastic. What's next? I mean, like I say, 13 odd years in, what's next for GoCardless? You must have I know you can't tell me all the super secret stuff in the rooms that we walked by earlier on, but what's coming next for GoCardless?
Well, I think that for us it's really continuing on that international expansion, adding new products, leveraging things like open banking, and just continuing to have as big an impact for our customers as we can, right? And we're really honoured to be working with almost 100,000 businesses that are collecting payments through our platform, and they're putting a huge amount of trust in us, right? And I feel like we have to earn that trust every day. So, for me, like it's about continuing on that journey, and we're really, really excited about it.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to having you on again. I mean, I think first time was about 5 or 6 years ago now, so we won't leave it 5 or 6 years ago to come and test the scorecard on it. But yeah, really great to see how things are going.
Always good to talk.
It's going to wrap up the show today, unfortunately. Big thank you, Hiroki, for coming on the show and telling people more about the business and where you guys are at. Where can people find a little bit more about you and GoCardless?
Well, on our website, GoCardless.com. Also, LinkedIn. We're pretty active there. So yeah, both those places.
Very good. As always, folks, you can find me lurking on LinkedIn predominantly, so look forward to seeing you over there. Thank you so much for listening. If you do like what you've heard, follow the podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review. Helps us make it better and helps other people find the show as well. As always, if you want to join the conversation, you can find us on social media. Just search for 11FS or Fintech Insider, or if you really want to, email us on podcasts@11fs.com. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for ISO 27001, SOC 2, GDPR, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Our audience gets a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/insider. That's VANTA.com/insider for $1,000 off.
Keeping up with all the noise and news from the world of financial services isn't easy. It's easy to get lost in buzzwords, jargon, and industry speak. So sometimes you just need a quick human rundown of the biggest stories. Well, you are in luck. Bite-Sized is our very own weekly newsletter that takes the biggest news stories from financial services and tells you exactly what's happening, why it matters, and what comes next. Bite-Size goes out every Friday at 11 a.m, so you can enjoy it with a coffee as you wrap up your week. Stay up to speed with the fast-moving world of financial services and subscribe today at 11fs.com/newsletters. That's 11fs.com/newsletters.